When Zack Snyder looks back at Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, he doesn't sound defeated. He doesn't sound regretful. If anything, he sounds defiant. Nearly a decade after its explosive 2016 release, Snyder remains unwavering in his belief that the film did exactly what it set out to do: challenge expectations, disrupt pop culture comfort zones, and push superhero storytelling into darker, more mythic territory. And in his own colorful phrasing, it was kicking the zeitgeist in the nuts. That blunt, unapologetic remark perfectly captures both the spirit of the film and the passionate, often polarizing conversation that has followed it ever since. The clash that split the fandom. When Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice hit theaters, it wasn't just another comic book movie. It was the first live-action cinematic showdown between two of the most iconic superheroes in history, Batman and Superman. Expectations were sky-high. The film starred Ben Affleck as an older, battle-hardened Batman and Henry Cavill reprising his role as Superman from Man of Steel. It introduced Wonder Woman, played by Gal Gadot, to the modern cinematic universe. It planted seeds for what would become the larger DC extended universe. On paper, it had everything. But upon release, the film became one of the most divisive superhero movies ever made. Critics were sharply split. Some called it overly grim, philosophically heavy, and narratively cluttered. Others praised its operatic tone, striking visuals, and willingness to explore moral ambiguity. Audiences, too, were divided, though one segment of viewers would become fiercely loyal: the Snyder faithful. A director who refused to soften the edges. Snyder has never been known for subtle, breezy blockbusters. From 300 to Watchmen, his films have always leaned into stylized violence, mythic framing, and philosophical undertones. With Batman vs. Superman, he doubled down. Instead of delivering a quippy, light-hearted superhero romp, Snyder crafted a somber meditation on power, fear, and accountability. His Batman brands criminals. His Superman is questioned by governments and distrusted by the public. The film grapples with themes of godhood, moral absolutism, and humanity's fear of the extraordinary. For some, this was bold and refreshing. For others, it was too much. But Snyder has consistently defended the artistic choices behind the film. In his view, challenging the cultural moment was precisely the point. At a time when superhero films were largely bright, formulaic, and crowd-pleasing, Batman vs. Superman intentionally swerved in the opposite direction. It wasn't designed to comfort the zeitgeist, it was meant to confront it. The Martha moment and the meme machine. No discussion of Batman vs. Superman is complete without acknowledging its most talked about scene, the now infamous Martha moment. When Batman prepares to kill Superman, he is stopped by the revelation that both heroes' mothers share the same name, Martha. The scene was meant to humanize Superman in Batman's eyes, forcing Bruce Wayne to confront his own trauma and see Clark Kent not as an alien threat, but as a man with a mother. The internet, however, had other ideas. The moment quickly became meme fodder. Late-night hosts joked about it. Social media dissected it endlessly. For many critics, it symbolized what they saw as the film's overly dramatic execution. Yet for Snyder's fans, the scene represented something deeper, an operatic emotional pivot rooted in shared grief and mythic storytelling. In hindsight, Snyder has stood by the moment. To him, it wasn't absurd, it was archetypal. It was about two titans realizing their shared humanity in the most vulnerable way possible. The rise of the Snyder faithful. If Batman vs. Superman divided critics, it galvanized a fan movement. Over time, a dedicated community emerged, one that not only defended Snyder's vision but actively campaigned for its completion. That movement would later reach its peak with the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League. After Snyder stepped away from Justice League due to personal tragedy, the theatrical version underwent significant changes under new direction. Many fans felt the final product strayed dramatically from Snyder's intended arc. What followed was unprecedented, a sustained, global fan campaign to release the Snyder Cut. For years, the movement persisted across social media platforms. Billboards were funded, hashtags trended, cast members showed support, and in 2021, the 4-hour Zack Snyder's Justice League debuted on streaming, a rare instance of a major studio responding directly to fan demand. For Snyder, this wasn't just vindication. It was proof that his storytelling resonated more deeply than critics might have suggested. Was the film ahead of its time? One of the recurring arguments from Snyder supporters is that Batman vs. Superman was simply ahead of its time. In 2016, the superhero genre was dominated by interconnected universes that emphasized humor, accessibility, and clear-cut heroism. Snyder's film, by contrast, leaned into distrust of institutions, media manipulation, and moral gray zones. Interestingly, in the years since, audiences have embraced darker, more deconstructive takes on superheroes. Films and series that question hero worship and explore flawed protagonists have gained widespread acclaim. Looking back, some critics have softened their stance on Batman vs. Superman, particularly the extended, Ultimate Edition, which restored key character moments and narrative clarity. For many viewers, that version felt more cohesive and emotionally grounded. Time has a way of reframing controversial art. A Batman unlike any other. Snyder's take on Batman was especially controversial. This wasn't the morally rigid caped crusader audiences were accustomed to. This was an older, scarred Bruce Wayne, a vigilante who had lost faith in humanity after witnessing the destruction of Metropolis in Man of Steel. Ben Affleck's portrayal was muscular, brooding, and ruthless. The warehouse fight sequence became one of the most praised action scenes in modern superhero cinema, showcasing a brutal, kinetic Batman who felt pulled directly from graphic novels. For Snyder, this interpretation wasn't a betrayal of the character, it was an exploration of what happens when a hero loses his way. Superman under scrutiny. Henry Cavill's Superman was equally polarizing. Instead of the smiling, reassuring symbol of hope many expected, Snyder's Superman wrestled with existential doubt. The world questioned his motives. Governments debated his oversight. News anchors speculated about his intentions. In a post-9/11, hyper-mediated world, Snyder envisioned a Superman who would not be universally adored, but fiercely debated. That choice may have clashed with nostalgic expectations, but it aligned with Snyder's broader mythic approach. His Superman wasn't just a hero, he was a god navigating a suspicious world. The cultural moment and the backlash. When Snyder says the film was kicking the zeitgeist in the nuts, he's acknowledging that it deliberately disrupted the prevailing cultural tone. The mid-2010s were defined by escapism. Audiences wanted levity. They wanted heroes who cracked jokes mid-battle and neatly resolved conflicts. Instead, Snyder delivered operatic gloom, political hearings, apocalyptic dreams, and a climactic battle that ended with Superman's death. It was bold, it was risky, and it was bound to provoke. But provocation, in Snyder's view, isn't failure. Legacy in the DC landscape. Today, the DC cinematic landscape looks very different. Leadership has shifted, reboots are underway, new creative directions are being charted. Yet Batman vs. Superman remains a pivotal chapter in the evolution of DC films. It marked a moment when the studio attempted to build a grand, interconnected saga with mythic weight. Its influence, both stylistically and structurally, can still be felt in fan discussions and online debates. And despite the controversy, it grossed hundreds of millions worldwide, proving that even divisive art can command massive attention. Why the fans never let go? Perhaps the most fascinating part of the story isn't the criticism, it's the loyalty. Snyder's fans didn't just like the film. They felt it. They connected to its seriousness, its operatic framing, its refusal to dilute emotional stakes. For them, the film represented an uncompromising artistic vision in a landscape increasingly shaped by formulas. That loyalty speaks to something deeper than box office numbers or review scores. It reflects the power of storytelling to forge identity and community, art, risk, and polarization. In the end, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice is more than a superhero film. It's a case study in what happens when blockbuster cinema collides with auteur ambition. Zack Snyder didn't aim for safe. He aimed for myth. And myth, by nature, invites interpretation. Some will always see the film as a misfire. Others will champion it as misunderstood genius. But nearly everyone agrees on one thing: it sparked conversation. Nearly 10 years later, people are still debating it. Still defending it. Still critiquing it. That kind of cultural longevity isn't accidental. Snyder's unapologetic stance. If Snyder has any regrets, he rarely shows them publicly. Instead, he speaks about the film with pride, and with gratitude for the fans who stood by him through years of online discourse. His Zeitgeist comment isn't bitterness. It's a badge of honor. Because to Snyder, art that challenges, art that provokes, art that refuses to blend in, is art that matters. And whether you loved Batman vs. Superman or loathed it, one thing is undeniable: